Hey guys, for the past couple months all of the videos that I've done have been on my truck that I've been building, but I figured I'd make this video on a new tool that I picked up. It's new to me naturally. You can tell just by looking at it that it's old, maybe even antique-ish. However, it's a 54-inch bed. The lathe is a 36 by 10-inch old Atlas. I'm not sure when it was made. There was no date or anything on this thing. There's just a model number or serial number. But the lathe is pretty nice. I bought it from an estate sale. It wasn't an auction, and I paid, I think, a premium price for it. But I'm really not concerned about the price. GE motor, 1725 horsepower, which are, not horsepower, but RPMs, which is what this lathe is rated for. Originally there was a switch, an on and off switch here, but the guy that I got it from converted it to this on, off, or I should say forward, off, and reverse square D switch, which seems to work pretty well. All the gears in here look good. They're metal, which is nice. Look like they could use a little bit of cleaning, but at least there's grease on them, or oil, and not just dry. There's a threading chart here, which I'm going to have to take the time to clean. I can barely read that sucker because of my eyes, but I have to get a magnifying glass here. The machine seems to be, like I say, it seems to be pretty much okay. Although there's a problem with the screw here. I believe that I can't make this do anything. It's not turning. And I believe there's probably something in here that needs a little bit of attention. And I'm sure whatever it is, I can either buy another one or make one. But either way, excuse me, this is what we have here. And needs a new belt on it. What happened was, it's so heavy, I don't know how much it actually weighs, but it was so heavy that we took this section here, this whole piece, off, and in order to do it, we had to unhook this switch, pull the wires through, but the belt was the problem. In order to get the belt off, from what I can tell at this point, you'd have to remove this shaft and take all these gears out of here, and I wasn't about to do that at someone else's house. So what I did was I just told the guy to cut the belt and we'll go from there. Now originally this thing was mounted, you can see where I cut the backboard here. It was mounted a little bit more forward, but it didn't give you much room to do anything. So I'm going to buy a replacement belt. I've already purchased it on Amazon. It's those type that have the cleats in, that's an adjustable belt. I've never used them, and I'm hoping that it's going to work good. If not, then I'll buy the belt I need and just go ahead and tear this thing apart and put it in. The parts I got with the lathe are a 4-jaw chuck and this 3-jaw chuck. Now, I'm not too crazy about this 3-jaw chuck because I've never seen one like this before, but the point of it is that's the maximum opening there. So I don't even think that's a 2-inch diameter. Unless somebody else knows something about this that I don't know, which is very possible. It says on here model 72, and I think it might say Hampton or something like that, or Hopton. I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, that came with it. Then there's this centering guide for long lengths. However, just setting it on here, you can see that it's, the lathe tailstock is a lot lower than where the center of this thing is. So I'm thinking this was actually for a 12-inch lathe. Maybe not. but I'm believing that that's what it's for. Anyway, there came this wood turning adapter with this collar that fits inside of the lathe here in the tube. It's a mortise taper or Morse taper, and that's pretty neat. Jacobson, and it is a Jacobson for the tailstock, or you can use the collar to put it into place. There's a key for that. There's the key. And then there's a face plate for, you know, mounting oddball shapes. A knurling tool, which looks like it's never been used, which is nice. Here you have a parting tool. Now the blade's pretty bad, but there's actually a brand new blade in the drawer that came with the table. The guy that made the table really did a nice job on this thing. It's made out of 2-inch boards on a steel frame with galvanized sheet metal top. So it's really a nice job. I mean, one thing nice about it is oil's not going to affect it. Okay, so back to this. Then there's a couple left and right hand tool holders. Some dogs, different sized dogs. This is some kind of adapter. I'm not sure what that is. It's for exactly. This looks like a homemade one. Looks like a, you can see it's welded. This is a homemade tool, I guess, for boring. There's no cutter on there. I guess I'd need to get some sort of a cutter. And then a wrench to, you know, put the tools in and adjust different things, which is nice. Threw in a, what brand is that? Utica steel. I would imagine it's made in the U.S., so it's still pretty good yet. And let's see, that's about it for that. And then in the drawer here, there's a bunch of gears, which this doesn't have a quick change gearbox, and I don't care about that because I'm not in a hurry. But we have a bunch of gears. We have some type of what looks like plastic or probably nylon that I guess the guy played around with. Porcelain thing. Brass. Looks like he started on making a brass drift pin. Some other pieces. An old wrench. Some other kind of tapered tool. I don't know what it's for. And then there's a bunch of cutters. These tools hold 1/4 inch. So there's a bunch of cutters there. A couple different pieces that would fit the lathe here. A key, a couple square bolts, a couple little things. A bunch of cutters here. These are the 1/4 inch ones. I think those are bigger, but here's a piece of the parting tool I was talking about, which I was glad to find. And that's about it for what it came with. And like I say, everything seems to be okay on it except for this screws not turning right. But the it has a really nice smooth travel on everything. I mean, you know, the on the saddle here, the parts that, you know, work for your X and Y or whatever you want to call it seem to do pretty well. So I'm happy with that. I'm kind of amazed it has these oilers on it. I see there's one missing right here. Maybe I can dig one up somewhere and put it on. And then there's grease fittings on this. I used to have an old Warner Swayze lathe that I had bought at an auction years ago. Man, that thing I loved. It had replaceable bushings in it, or bearings, that were oiled with a little oiler that sat on top of the lathe head on both sides here, and that thing was really nice. And some of the other stuff I have, I bought a new milling machine. It's a Grizzly Geo 758. Just was fooling around with it with some plastic the other day. I haven't had a chance to really do anything with it. And I also have this little mini lathe, which the big lathe makes this thing look like a baby, which it is. But nonetheless, even though it's very small, I've made some pretty neat things out of it already. I've actually turned some steel, you know, as big as that is. You can see that's, you know, about at the limit of what the machine can do. This was for pressing out a bearing that I needed on, to install a bearing in the rear axle of my wife's Blazer. What I want to do is make one of these things. This is for a Sears lawnmower deck, a 48-inch deck. They're forever breaking and they're like $80 for the parts, so I need to replace them. Got some other tools for the lathe, the mini lathe, as well as the milling machine. So extra chuck parts and cutters, some keys, and I have a drill for that for the mini lathe, as well as a live center, which I had the live center somewhere today with me. Or here it is. Here it's. I wanted to use this. My son wants to be able to make some wooden pickets or little baluster parts. So between the live center and using this for wood, or even the 4-jaw chuck, he should be able to turn those. I'll have to get some kind of another tool post, I guess, or I can probably make something and adapt it to this to be able to cut wood with it. And then also, besides that, came this book. Now this is a Craftsman book, but if you look in it, and the book's in real good shape. The guy had this in his basement, and tells you about the lathe. Now the lathe that's pictured in here is a little newer. You can see that it doesn't have that back pulley. Now this one has a guard over top of the pulley, so it's a little newer than the one I have. But I don't care about that because this thing is in good shape. I mean, if you look at the weighs on it, there's nothing been dropped ever on this thing. I mean, there's some wear on it, but nothing bad. It leveled up beautifully. And the only thing I see back in here, there's some marks there. When I first bought it, the tailstock, I guess, had been sitting for a while in one spot, and underneath of it was a little bit of rust. So I just sprayed it with WD-40 and then wiped it down with some 600 grit sandpaper, just very lightly to clean it up, and it came pretty nice. And there's virtually no movement in anything. I mean, I'm pulling on that sucker and there's no movement anywhere, so I think this is going to work good for me for all of the things that I want to be able to make. So I thought you might enjoy that, and I hope that the guy by the name of Mr. Peter Tubal Kane sees this video of this lathe, because I'd really like some information about it, or to see him make a video about how to do things with this lathe. I mean, I can use the lathe, but I'm not a machinist. I was a builder and a surveyor all of my life. So, but I'm wanting to do this now, and I'm totally enjoying putting this old sucker back together here. So, wish me luck with my endeavors. The one thing that I want to make next is I want to be able to take this urethane and make the cab mounts for my truck, and luckily this 4-inch chuck will fit this stuff. So once I get this lathe running, I'll be able to grind, do with these what I need to do. The lathe chuck that I have on this mini lathe, the mini lathe could cut this, but it's too big to hold it. I'd have to do something else with it, but I'm not going to waste my time with that. For right now, I'm just going to wait until I get the belt. I should have the belt, I think, Thursday for this thing. So, alright guys, well, have a good one, and hope you enjoyed this video. It's just something a little different. Bye.